I've said it before, and I'll say it again. 2026 is the year to be promoting more love, more kindness, and most importantly, more empathy. We need it, folks. And honestly, what better way to do it than to make movies that help people connect with their humanity? After Rocky's show of extreme empathy in Project Hail Mary, helping his new human friend get home, Steven Spielberg now introduces us to a new form of extraterrestrials who only ever wanted to help humanity reach the highest level of evolution through peace and benevolence. Disclosure Day allowed Spielberg to return to the niche that helped make him one of the most celebrated filmmakers in the world, and yeah, we're talking about extraterrestrials, or, ETs, to put it a different way. It's also a story about faith, though, or simply believing in something, be it religious doctrine or UFO brain downloads. While the entire plot mostly revolves around the dilemma of whether the world should learn about their existence or not, we also get to experience the unique nature of their existence, which goes beyond human comprehension. Having said that, let's break down the uniqueness of these extraterrestrials to the best of our abilities. Who are the aliens in Disclosure Day, and how did they come to Earth? To be honest, there's not too much to discuss about what these aliens look like because they have the most conventional design you can imagine for an alien. We're talking like the alien emoji on your phone conventional, but instead of being green, these aliens are bluish-gray in color. They range from at least 3 feet to a maximum of 7 feet because the aliens we see in the footage that Daniel Kellner and Margaret Fairchild exposed to the world were comparatively younger and smaller in size, as opposed to the in vivo 17, who's much larger, far older, and more infirm than every other alien we've seen in the film's archival footage. If you've watched Disclosure Day, you know at the very core of the film is the shocking revelation of how the US military has been secretly interacting with extraterrestrials for decades. Not only did they hide the existence of alien life from the public, they also used alien technology to make major scientific and technological advances behind closed doors. The truth traces back to the years following World War II, when an alien spacecraft crashed near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. While the beings aboard that UFO reportedly died in the crash, they weren't the last visitors to arrive on Earth. More aliens began to arrive on our planet, thus leading to a long-running series of secret encounters. Rather than informing the public, American leaders chose to bury the truth. Over time, the operation became so secretive that even elected officials, including the president, were kept out of the loop. Instead, control of the alien program was handed to the military and the Ward X Corporation, who worked together to conceal the extraterrestrial presence while studying alien technology for their own purposes. But then, the government's secret alien program went far beyond simply hiding the truth, as the researchers conducted autopsies on deceased extraterrestrials and even performed invasive experiments on those still alive. For Daniel, learning about how these people with power and money had been treating the living aliens was the final straw, which convinced him that the entire operation had remained hidden as part of what may be the greatest conspiracy in human history. People like Noah Scanlon defended the secrecy, insisting it was necessary to protect humanity because, in their view, the public simply wasn't ready to handle the reality that intelligent alien life existed. That would derail the very fabric of faith and people's belief in the existence of God. According to them, it could cause the world to descend into madness as people would fail to comprehend what these aliens really are. Because of that belief, the cover-up continued for 79 years, but everything changed when the aliens chose 2 young people to serve as their conduits, thus setting the events of the film into motion in ways that could no longer be controlled. At the same time, several Ward X employees also began to question the company's actions and decided they had seen enough. They ended up turning against the organization and helped trigger the events of Disclosure Day by finally exposing the truth to the entire world. Why did the aliens really come to Earth? We humans are self-serving beings who simply refuse to understand how trivial we really are in the higher order of the universe. There are many things that exist well beyond the comprehension of our human capabilities, but instead of trying to understand them, we fear them and then try to weaponize them to fight our own personal vendettas. That's probably why so many of us would be scrambling to decode the true meaning of the message delivered by In Vivo 17, the towering old alien that Hugo rolled in on a wheelchair. This alien turns out to be Hugo's ultimate plea to convince humanity of the existence of something beyond their understanding. As it turns out, for 5 whole years, Hugo has been secretly harboring this living extraterrestrial after smuggling it out of a Ward X black site, and they've been working together ever since, which explains how Hugo knew everything about Daniel and Margaret's past, including the small detail of what Margaret's childhood home looked like. After the world witnesses 79 years of archival footage from the Department of Defense and Ward X Wordex's atrocities on these magnificent beings, we see In Vivo 17 step onto the live broadcast stage to reveal itself to 7 billion human beings. Margaret and Daniel then approach the alien together and embrace it. The alien whispers something we can't hear into Daniel's ear in a sequence of clicks and an 8-bit binary language only he can understand, as he's the mathematical conduit. In response, Daniel smiles and translates the complex data for Margaret, who immediately returns to the anchor desk in order to deliver this message to the entire world. Even though the film never really explicitly explains what that message for the humans was, we think in order to understand In Vivo 17's message, you first have to grasp what Disclosure Day is really all about. Sure, this is a story with extraterrestrials and their UFOs, but fundamentally speaking, it's really about human nature. The film never hides that the world is on the brink of nuclear war between the US and North Korea, and according to the philosophy of these aliens, this was the natural result of building societies that were bereft of any empathy. As Hugo tells Noah Scanlon during their telepathic conversation, the aliens of Disclosure Day believe that empathy is the foremost evolutionary advantage, and rejecting it is leading humans to extinction. Pretty relatable to the current state of the world, no? This also explains why the strange guttural noise-like language that Margaret involuntarily spoke on broadcast during the beginning of the film basically translated by Daniel into a warning to the masses, asking them to not be afraid of what they don't know or understand. Keeping all this in mind, we think In Vivo 17 basically gave Daniel a message of peace that could potentially prevent the cataclysmic course of history that's soon to unfold. But Wordex, or the Department of Defense, never cared to understand that sense of empathetic evolution that the aliens wanted for the humans, because how could another race from another corner of the universe with the selfless agenda of human salvation through empathic evolution? Am I right? That's why they concealed the aliens, reverse engineered their extraterrestrial technology to give the US a technological advantage while conducting horrific experiments on these entities. As a result, the potential apocalypse in the film is basically proof that the aliens were right in their philosophy, but Wordex has never been a passive observer because their approach has been pretty much shaping society and geopolitics for 79 years. The world that the military and the corporations helped to build is the direct result of their lack of empathy, so no wonder they wanted to hide the truth about the aliens from the general world. In a way, the organization stands for judgment and destruction in the most biblical possible manner. At this point, I'd have actually understood if the aliens believed humanity to be irredeemable because they'd been so mistreated by the people they came to save for 79 years, but because their empathy is their own foremost evolutionary advantage, they never gave up. Rather, they sought to inspire empathy in humanity at cost, and this is further made explicit in a subplot involving Daniel's girlfriend Jane, a former nun who didn't lose faith in God, but rather lost faith in humanity. Like the nun told Jane, God made Earth for humans, which means the universe had space for many other divine beings beyond our mental limit. I think that's what finally moves Jane to snap out of it and head for the Kansas City news studio to help ensure Disclosure Day happens. As difficult as it is to believe, the aliens want to save humans from their growing lack of empathy, which is paving the way for nuclear annihilation, and that's truly why they came to Earth. Why did the aliens choose Daniel Kellner and Margaret Fairchild as their conduits? So throughout the film, both Daniel and Margaret show strange abilities that cannot be explained. All we really know is that they were both abducted as children and had traumatic encounters they couldn't remember no matter how much they tried. It was that incident that allowed Daniel to comprehend the aliens' 8-bit language, while also giving Margaret an all-knowing third eye sort of ability that helped her understand what everyone was going through by simply looking at them. After Margaret and Daniel saw the replica of Margaret's house that Hugo had built inside a warehouse, they initially didn't want to remember their childhood, but then Hugo convinced Margaret that if she chose to give up now, she would never understand what was happening to her or become capable of figuring out the true extent of her abilities as a passenger. So in order to gain the knowledge that would help Margaret make sense of everything again, both her and Daniel hooked up to the wires on the monitor and started channeling the power of the alien diving device in order to remember their repressed memories. This is how we find out that the aliens selected Daniel and Margaret when they were children and had first made contact with them on February 23, 1996 by appearing in the form of animals. Of course, why these two in particular were chosen remains one of the story's biggest mysteries, and the date itself also doesn't seem to have any special connection to real-world UFO mythology. However, what the film does make clear is that Daniel and Margaret were never ordinary people. These interstellar beings intended for these kids to become the foundation of a new stage in human evolution, and with their twiny, bare hands, these aliens performed neurological alterations on both children so as to turn them into two individuals whose abilities would perfectly complement one another. That's how Daniel was gifted with extraordinary mathematical intelligence, while Margaret developed an unparalleled capacity for empathy and emotional understanding. Daniel's understanding of pure logic complemented Margaret's possession of pure emotion. Daniel's abilities would first surface during his college years when he was 20, as he saw a cardinal bird by the window. And that's how everything hit him like a freight train, as he could now see naturally solved mathematical equations instead of questions, and he could now understand 8-bit language. However, he called it a curse as he couldn't relate to his friends anymore, and these circumstances ultimately led him down a troubled path that ended with him in prison. Compared to that, Margaret's gifts remained dormant for much longer and only began to awaken after she encountered a red cardinal 24 hours before the current events of the film. Their transformation was finally completed when Hugo took them back to the meticulously recreated version of Margaret's childhood home, which triggered the long-buried memories of their encounter with the aliens, allowing their true abilities to fully emerge. In doing so, it prepared them for the events of Disclosure Day and the crucial role they were destined to play in humanity's future. I think the aliens had recognized that human communication was flawed, and if humanity wanted to comprehend the cosmic truth about extraterrestrials without descending into madness, they could do so only by combining perfect logic with perfect empathy. Because the aliens spoke in an 8-bit language, they made Daniel the perfect translator for their intentions, and Margaret had the ability to connect with everyone, so her abilities helped people to really listen to her when she delivered the message from beyond the stars. Why did these aliens come to Daniel and Margaret as animals? During the flashback scenes in the gingerbread house, the aliens appear to young Margaret and Daniel in the forms of a cardinal, a deer, a raccoon, and a fox. Now, rather than revealing their true appearance, the extraterrestrials chose shapes that children would recognize and feel comfortable around. The film always makes sure to suggest that the aliens are benevolent but far beyond human understanding, which means that showing their true forms to two young children could have been overwhelming, so they instead presented themselves as familiar animals to make the encounter less frightening and easier to process. They wanted to prevent the young minds of Margaret and Daniel from shattering, so they manifested as comforting terrestrial animals. This also helps to explain the significance of the cardinal that visited Margaret's apartment years later. More than just a random bird, it appears to be an alien messenger and a trigger left behind for her future self. Its arrival begins awakening the abilities that had been dormant since childhood, setting Margaret on the path toward discovering who she really is and the role she's meant to play in the events of Disclosure Day. To think that the aliens even paid attention to detail on the Hansel and Gretel theme in order to make the kids feel comfortable is truly one of the most heartwarming aspects of the film. The aliens turned Margaret into an unlikely messiah for humanity. The burden of Margaret's abilities are clearly too much to bear because her all-seeing third-eye powers give her an extraordinary connection to the people around her. She instinctively understands others on a deep emotional level, allowing her to speak multiple languages effortlessly, hear people's thoughts, and even appear to them as someone they know and trust. However, at first, she has little to no control over these abilities, and the experience leaves her confused and frightened, causing her to question both herself and her faith until her suppressed memories of the alien encounter return. This forms one of Disclosure Day's most compelling character arcs, as Margaret is deeply uncomfortable with the idea that people might begin to see her as a god or place their faith in her. When one of Hugo's people bowed down to her, the possibility of being worshipped terrified her, and that's probably why she spends much of the story resisting that role, which seems to be unfolding around her. Fortunately, everything changes when she fully understands why she was chosen and the greater responsibility that comes with her abilities. So rather than running from her destiny, Margaret ultimately accepts it. If you think about it, her journey echoes that of many religious and mythological figures who initially struggle with the burden placed upon them before embracing a greater purpose. That transformation from fear and uncertainty to acceptance and resolve definitely goes on to become one of the story's most powerful themes, because once Margaret accepts who she is, her first act is actually saving Hugo and his entire crew from the Wardes agents. What is the unique alien device we see in Disclosure Day? So the diving devices we see are mysterious alien artifacts shaped like cylindrical rods. As far as anyone knows, only 3 exist on Earth, with each in the possession of Noah Scanlon, Daniel Kellner, and Hugo Wakefield. When someone makes direct contact with one of the devices, they seem to gain access to an extraordinary source of alien energy and psychic power. The rods are capable of remarkable feats, including rendering people invisible by bending light around them, allowing users to enter and influence another person's mind, and generating enough energy to restore entire electrical grids. But these abilities come at a steep cost because human beings were never meant to channel this kind of power, and using the rods places enormous strain on both the body and the mind. In fact, prolonged use can result in severe burns, intense psychological stress, and lasting neurological damage. While the devices offer incredible capabilities, every use pushes their human operators closer to their physical and mental limits. One of the main mysteries of the film revolves around these 3 pieces of alien technology, as Vortex has spent decades studying and experimenting with them. Disclosure Day never fully explains how these devices work, but it does reveal several of their extraordinary capabilities. We see Noah Scanlon use one of the devices throughout the film to communicate across great distances, track individuals, and gather information about their whereabouts. In its most disturbing application, the technology can even be used to take control of another person's mind, as Scanlon demonstrates when he manipulates Jane and tries to force her to kill Daniel. However, every time Scanlon taps into the technology, it places a tremendous strain on his body and mind. This is why he relies on a team of medical specialists and advanced equipment simply to keep himself stable, thus highlighting the dangerous cost of wielding alien power beyond human limits. The alien devices are also extremely dangerous when handled incorrectly, which is demonstrated when one of Scanlon's soldiers picks up a device with his bare hands and briefly vanishes from existence before reappearing moments later and collapsing on the ground. This suggests that the technology can have unpredictable and potentially devastating effects on unprepared users, but Margaret is able to use the devices far more effectively because of her connection with the aliens. She seems to instinctively understand how they work and what they're capable of. With them, she can manipulate power sources, create convincing illusions, and perform grand feats that appear almost miraculous. Even so, this tech has its limits because during the film, one of the devices literally falls apart after being pushed too far, which clarified that these artifacts were not indestructible and could be damaged through overuse. I think this alien diving device has endless potential, and Vortex could only manage to uncover a fraction of it during 79 years of research. Sadly though, that brings us to the end of our video. What do you guys think about the latest Spielbergian aliens? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments section down below.